Okay, joining me today to talk Kylian Mbappe, the twists and the turns around a possible move, we have the Athletics' Adam Crafton and Mario Cortegena, who covers Real Madrid for us as well. Mario, thank you for coming on. I'll talk to you in a moment about your piece that's up on the Athletic at the moment. But first of all, Adam, in Mbappe, we're talking about the superstar of world football now, aren't we? He's the best player, clearly, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think the World Cup probably confirmed that once and for all. I know obviously he didn't win the final, but I was lucky to be there on that final, and the kind of 40 minutes he produced from the moment that it went to 2-1 until the end of extra time was just it was like nothing I've ever seen live at a football match. Really, it was sensational. Um, and I think there is always this sense of you know we see it from an international point of view, obviously at World Cups and European Championships. We see it in Champions League games, but I think there's always been this sense that should he be at a bigger league than the French league, whether that's the Spanish league, whether that's the Premier League. The challenge of all of that is he so far has been at a club that's been able to outpay everyone else on the market at various different points, whether that's Real Madrid or Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool. I mean, all these clubs would love to have him, but PSG have just continually put their hand in their pocket, used all their political clout with, involving the French president, Emmanuel Macron, last summer, got him on the phone to Mbappe to keep him at the club as well. But he's still young enough to have that transfer. And the most remarkable thing, because some people will be listening to this and thinking, didn't he sign a 3-year contract last summer? Well, yes.
Not really.
But it wasn't really, because it was a 2-year plus one. And it was kind of the deception of the moment from PSG and Mbappe's point of view to say, he's staying for another 3 years, but it later emerged that it was 2 years plus one. So that means he actually now goes into this summer with a year left on his contract, unless they exercise an option, and we're not quite sure what the different clauses are that means that option would be activated, or whether it just needs both the player and PSG to sign up to it.
Yeah, it's all very political, isn't it? Whether it's the involvement of Macron in keeping him at PSG, obviously the Qatari ownership of PSG and the officials involved with that, even the propaganda of that 2025 shirt and everything else as well. I called it a saga at the top of the intro to the podcast, and it already is that, isn't it? Because last summer had so many twists and turns just in those few months, really. What was your view of it, Adam? You were writing about it in November. You've written about it a lot over your time with the Athletic as well. How close do you think he was to joining Real Madrid in the summer?
Really close. But at the same time, never underestimate PSG and never underestimate Qatar when they decide they want something and they want something to happen, because I think it's fair to say, all the expectation, I think even from the player himself, was, throughout last season that he'd be leaving PSG. And then all of a sudden, they kind of start love bombing him, and they managed to come to this agreement. I think Real Madrid was surprised by it. I think even, if you think about when Man City went for Erling Haaland, remember that deal was done before the summer, really. One of the reasons why Real Madrid probably didn't go as hard for Haaland was thinking, well, we're going to be getting Mbappe, maybe we go back for Haaland further down the line. So there was this kind of knock-on effect on the whole market. So it's been a huge soap opera. I think PSG were very annoyed by what they felt was a kind of arrogance from Madrid around, that it would be an inevitability that this great player has to belong to the great club Real Madrid, that this superstar has to go and play for the aristocratic club of Europe, whereas just because we're the new boys, it doesn't mean we don't get to keep the best player for some of his best years. And I think in the end, yes, Macron got involved. The money was obviously massive. He's the best paid player in the world. But I don't know. I mean, it depends who you believe. I mean, PSG insists that the offer in the end wasn't so different from PSG or Real Madrid. You can make your own mind up on whether you believe that or not. But at the same time, it's been very strange because since he agreed to stay at PSG, you would have thought, well, he's decided to stay, okay, then it'll all kind of go away for a bit. But actually, it was almost like as soon as that happened, it all started kicking off again.
The opposite.
It was really strange. So you had in the summer, the sporting director Luis Campos goes into PSG, Leonardo goes out. That was something that PSG thought, yes, it would be a good move, but also it was someone that Mbappe knew from Monaco previously. Christophe Galtier came in as coach. But all of a sudden, he was unsettled again. And he didn't seem to be very happy about the summer transfer business. And then all of these stories emerged, I think, was it September, around September time, to say that he might even try to leave the club as soon as this January. And initially, those stories were not played down by people close to Mbappe. Those stories were not, were not rejected by people close to Mbappe. PSG tried to put a lid on it and said, we don't know anything about this. And then it was only, I think, sort of later that week or the following week that Mbappe then came out and said, oh, I don't know where these stories came from. It wasn't from my entourage, etc., etc. So it's always been very, very unsettled. I think PSG, now that they have a year left, +1 potentially, I think if they got the right offer this summer, they would do business, because I think they would view it as, we kept him for the World Cup, which was obviously really important from a Qatar perspective. We've kept him for another year. Maybe we win the Champions League with him and Messi. But if the right money comes, it might just be time to move on.
The story is not over. This is the main headline, and maybe you are surprised because of me saying that, but Florentino Perez and other people at Real Madrid board are trying to put that idea in the Spanish media, the same Spanish media that Florentino used to leak that the deal was done with Kylian Mbappe, now are being used to send a different idea, because they are afraid about what happened in the past. They are worried because if PSG know about these moves and they try to stop any a potential move. But definitely, Real Madrid have maintained the contact with Mbappe in a very discreet way, both directly and indirectly, with people involved in the conversations. And Mbappe and PSG, sources from PSG confirmed it to me. Mbappe still wants to play for Real Madrid one day.
In terms of Mbappe to Real Madrid, Adam, it's maybe not the automatic transfer that it once was either. You look at the stars who have left La Liga in recent years, the Super League plot, even the battle against the Premier League, against English football. For Mbappe to go to Real Madrid, it is not the transfer that it perhaps would have been automatically 10 years ago. It's a different landscape now, isn't it? How important is this piece to Real Madrid's future, in your opinion?
Well, they still win Champions Leagues, so yeah, they're doing okay. But
when was the last time they signed a true world star, though, in that sense?
No, you're right.
You're a Galactico of the past.
No, you're right. I mean, their strategy over the last few years has been, whether they would have preferred to sign superstars is another question. But the strategy they've used has been smart. It's been young players. It's been Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Valverde. And it's been
the Brazilians.
The Brazilians, yeah. And that's been, largely it's Juni Calafat who's been behind a lot of that in the Real Madrid recruitment side. But I think, it all brings in this sort of broader question about kind of new money and old money in football. It's the clubs that think they are the biggest clubs in the world and should be locked in forever, and the place where all the big players go, your Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus, AC Milan, Manchester United, kind of the Super League clubs. And then you have kind of PSG, Manchester City, Newcastle, Chelsea to a certain extent as well. and this big perception of that continuing battle. And we saw that when he renewed Mbappe with PSG in the summer, in May, there was this extraordinary statement, not only from Real Madrid, but from La Liga. La Liga put out a statement condemning, criticizing PSG for renewing their own player, which is a really remarkable thing. You can't imagine the Premier League putting out a statement because Liverpool don't sign Jude Bellingham in the summer and he goes somewhere else, right? That is in English football, that is impossible. But I think it's really a sign of a lot of the politics that's been going on behind the scenes in football in the past few years, whether that's the Super League, whether that's in Spain with Laporta at Barcelona, Perez at Real Madrid, Javier Tebas, the La Liga chairman, who has been involved in trying to do these private equity deals and not getting Real Madrid and Barcelona in support of it. And it all comes in. I mean, you also have to remember PSG and Madrid, their relationship was really, really bad after the Super League, because PSG were one of the clubs, which might surprise some people, that refused to go in. They didn't go in, and people from other clubs were calling PSG president Nasser Al-Khelaifi saying, the bus is leaving, you need to get on the bus. And he's saying, I'm not, you guys are the ones falling off the bus. And it didn't happen. And I think I remember the first time I think that Perez and Al-Khelaifi saw each other in person was before PSG played Real Madrid last season, and they played in Paris, and there was a lunch at a Michelin star restaurant in Paris, and the extent to which it was uneasy at the time is underlined by the fact they couldn't even agree what time they should meet. Right, the first idea was to meet at 1 p.m. The other side said, no, we're going to meet at 1:30. So this went back and forth, back and forth. Eventually, they agreed at 1:15, and Perez still turned up late, and then Al-Khelaifi told him off for being late. So that gives you an idea of what the tension was like. And I think to an extent why, beyond how brilliant Mbappe is as a player, how it was just too humiliating for PSG, particularly because they rejected 180 million euros the previous summer, maybe even 200 million euros the previous summer, to then lose him for free to this guy that they don't really like the next summer. So a lot of it was ego and pride and just the kind of politics of football all crystallizing around this one superstar.
A lot to unpack, certainly. Mario, in terms of affording Mbappe, how do Real Madrid do it? You've wrote in the piece that it's unlikely it's going to be a January move this month for him, maybe not even the summer. How do they actually make the numbers on this work?
Yeah, it's as Adam was explaining, Real Madrid feel like they can't be in the battle with all these clubs. I mean, PSG, Manchester City, Chelsea. Actually, Real Madrid say and repeat that there is like a Super League, that the Super League does exist, and it's with the Premier League clubs. So that's why they are trying to sign Endrick as they did with Vinicius or Rodrigo or Fede Valverde or Camavinga. So now about Mbappe. They have saved a lot of money by not spending a lot of money each summer. If you can check, I had a look at, for example, Transfermarkt. The balance in the last summers has been very positive for Real Madrid. They are earning more money than spending since 2020. In 2020, they made a big investment with Hazard, Mendy, Jovic, but after that, Real Madrid have been saving a lot of money. So the money is ready, and especially because it's I don't know, Adam, but a move from Mbappe in January, it's considered impossible. I see very difficult also in this summer, because all that about ego. PSG have showed to the world that they don't need money, that they prefer to lose a big player for free before that that having to deal with a club like Real Madrid. So I think that the move could happen in the summer of 2024, but Mbappe would be free to deal with Real Madrid, to negotiate with Real Madrid, and even signing with Real Madrid from the next 1st of January. So it would mean that a big investment about the salary and so on, but it would mean that Real Madrid wouldn't have to pay anything to PSG.
Yeah, I think the initial idea from PSG's side, and certainly from Macron, was France has the Olympic Games in 2024, and they really want Mbappe to be one of the overage players but for France at that Olympic Games. So their idea was he stays until 2024 at least, but I do wonder whether, you know, at some point, I know people will laugh at this because people think PSG do what they want with financial fair play. At some point, PSG do have to just bring proper money in for their players. And I think if they were to get a big offer this summer, you know, and I mean, what do you call the price of Mbappe in any market? But Mbappe, when he's got a year left on his contract, maybe is a little bit cheaper than he would be, you know, last year, for example.
How much will it take, Adam, do you think?
150. But why would you do that if you can do it for 6 months later?
Well, they've done it before Real Madrid, haven't they?
Yeah, but what Mbappe camp told me about what happened in summer is that Liverpool did like an approach in July, and that Antero Enrique and Nasser Al-Khelaifi asked 400 million, and so it was too much. And
Mbappe 400
euros or pounds?
Yeah. I think it was euros, because we always speak in euros. Mbappe didn't consider to go to Liverpool because he still wants to play one day for Real Madrid. And now, speaking with a senior source at PSG, this source told me that in January a move would be impossible, and in summer almost impossible. That person told me, like, well, there is nothing impossible in football, but we could ask like 400 million, or maybe even not putting a price for Mbappe. But it was interesting for me to hear again about the 400 million.